people who were impressed with his healing and his teaching start gathering. And all of a sudden the numbers become uncountable. The distance. It is far. And all of a sudden you realize as you're curled up over the edge of the board, the line behind you is getting long. In perfect faith. And come here with the little you can do. There is this touching part, and again, only John mentions this. We all know the story from Sunday school. It's the little handout that you got in your leaflets. It's a little thing to draw if you have little children. At some point, a kid comes over, and Andrew says, belief is